I have 4 free transfers and the assistant manager chip ready to go for double game week 24, but with so many potential moves, it's tricky to decide on the best strategy to use for double game week 24. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through my plans, the players I'm considering, and how I'm preparing for this huge game week in FPL. But without further ado, let's get stuck into today's transfer plans video. Now, today's video is going to be absolutely jam-packed with information about double game week 24, the assistant manager chip, and potentially a strategy I will deploy using the assistant manager chip in game week 24. So I urge you to watch as much of the video as you can. And just a quick message before we get into the review of game week 23. I am on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so it would be really great if you could consider subscribing to the FPL Mugs YouTube channel. And of course, if you do enjoy today's video, make sure that you drop a like. But with the game week 23 review, what I like to do this for is it kind of allows us to see if there were any issues within the squad for game week 23 and how we plan to address them going forward into the next section of the video. Of course, you can see there 65 points all out, a small green arrow. I can't complain about a small green arrow, but there were some disappointment moments within the game week, particularly with the late goal conceded by Liverpool. Now, you will see Andrew Robertson has made his way into my team. The sort of reason for this is it's a big differential play, 4.4% ownership. The price isn't exactly cheap, but I still think as the favoured left-back of Liverpool, I'm quite happy to own him. He's had sort of... Sorry, I'll just scroll down here so you can see the starts. He's had 19 starts over the 22 game weeks he was available. He was injured for 1 game week, which I think is really good. Yes, he comes off early some game weeks, but I still think that's good enough for me to consider him as an option for my Liverpool triple up. I mean, when you compare it with Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's only had 20 starts this entire Premier League season. So similar to Trent in the number of starts he's had, which I really didn't expect when I looked at Robertson's stats, but I quite like him for the double game week. So we'll see how we go with it. Again, super disappointing to concede late on against Ipswich, but it is what it is. On the other hand, a more positive note about the defence, of course, Gabriel and David Raya coming away with a clean sheet. David Raya getting the save points and 2 bonus points, bringing him up to a total of 9 points total. A bit of redemption from the last few weeks with the double Arsenal defence, and it does make me think whether I just should keep a hold of the double Arsenal defence going forward. I mean, Saliba's back slightly earlier than I personally expected, so maybe that's a sign of good things to come for the Arsenal defence. Of course, it does make them drastically better as a defence having Saliba there. I kind of don't want to spend too long on this section, so I will just briefly mention some of the important parts of the team. Of course, Salah versus Isak captaincy. Isak coming out on top by, I think, 5 points over Mohamed Salah, which I didn't necessarily expect. Of course, Southampton's always going to be an easy game for any team in the Premier League. They're absolutely shocking. But Ipswich conceding 6 previously to Manchester City in the previous game week. Conceding 4 against Liverpool. A bit surprising that Salah wasn't more involved within this game, but I still think I would have captained Salah either way, and of course I did for this game week. And Buemo's penalty got retaken. Of course, he slots at home for that penalty score. No bonus point in this match, but still, I can't complain with a 7-pointer from him. In terms of Rodgers, Palmer, João Pedro, and Ismail Assar all blanking, I'm just really not happy with players like João Pedro and Ismail Assar in particular. Rodgers and Palmer I'm more inclined to keep a hold of because I think the fixtures coming up are decent enough to keep a hold of them, whereas Brighton and Palace, you can argue either side, but still, overall, for game week 23, 65 points isn't too bad with a small green arrow. Of course, in the next section of the video, I'm going to discuss my transfer plans going forward in the next few weeks. I might split it into 2 sections, one using the assistant manager chip and one not using the assistant manager chip. But let's take a look at how I'm planning to go forward into the next few weeks of FPL. Now, for this first part of the transfer plans video, I want to discuss a strategy going forward where I do not use the assistant manager chip. For me, using it in 24 could be a viable option, but I'm going to cover that in the next transfer plan section of the video where I will look to use the chip. For now, though, let's have a look at the team without that option. Again, we used the review for Game Week 23 to find out some issues with the squad, and I think João Pedro and Ismail Assar are slight problems for me. Yes, João Pedro's got Southampton away in sort of a 3-game week's time, but still, I just don't think he's a good enough option right now. His data is not really great. Brighton as well aren't playing too amazing. So I think these two options could be transferred around to make some room for other players. What I could do potentially is get Kluivert a week earlier. He's been getting a lot of price rises recently, and I think he'll get a lot more ahead of that Southampton away fixture. So moving in for him and getting rid of Ismail Assar could be a way I go about things this game week. I do like Johan Wissa as an option at this point here, but it would require me to make a transfer elsewhere, and I think that would be Chris Wood out. In terms of a striker you could go for who does have a double game week is Ndai, and that's sort of 3 of my 4 available transfers used for the game week. Now, I did say in the previous section of the video that I like David Raya as an option in FPL because the fixtures coming up for at least 2 out of the next 3 are pretty good. Leicester away from home and West Ham at home. City at home isn't great, but still playing them for that game week. It's just playing them for 1 game week to benefit from the next 2 fixtures. I don't think it's as bad as people really make out. So I could just keep a hold of that, save a transfer, or I could free up some money and go to Pickford as that backline. But I don't really mind keeping a hold of them for the game week, and what I would probably do is bench Kluivert for the Liverpool fixture and play Rodgers over him. So going into 24, using 3 free transfers out of the 4 available ones, I really don't mind this team whatsoever. Of course, Ndai is a bit of a punt for the double game week, but the Leicester fixture at home is really nice to have for him. Of course, Dominic Calvert-Lewin could be injured, so Ndai's minutes could look a lot better. In terms of going into 25, it would be the case that you play both of Kirkes and Kluivert, and I would actually bench Andrew Robertson for the Wolves at home fixture and potentially transfer him out at this point to a very cheap asset that I like the look of in Chalobah of Chelsea. And the reason I like him is because in 27 and 28 you have 2 great fixtures in Southampton and Leicester at home. A cheap option in that Chelsea defence. Yes, Chelsea aren't playing too fantastic lately, but I still think with those 2 great home fixtures, he could be an option you look at, especially around that sort of game week period of 27 to 28. So I don't mind getting him in at that point to get rid of Andrew Robertson. And I suppose for the rest of the team, there really isn't too many transfers I would make to it. You could potentially think about playing Ndai, but I think the other options in this midfield, all of their fixtures trump Ndai's fixtures personally. Going into 26, I suppose we'll plan ahead for 1 more game week from this point. Again, not many changes would really be needed. I would kind of start gaining my free transfers back up from using quite a lot of them in game week 24, because in game week 29 we do have a blank game week for quite a few teams, so having enough free transfers to really help me out for that period without using my wild card could be great. Potentially wild card in 30 could be a strategy to go for as well. I think in 26 you could argue selling Morgan Rodgers to go to Amad Diallo, because he does have sort of Everton away from home and then Ipswich at home, followed by Arsenal, then Leicester away from home. So I don't think he's too much of a bad option, in all honesty. I mean, if you look at Aston Villa's fixtures, they aren't exactly groundbreaking, so you could definitely consider that move, in my opinion. But overall, for the next few weeks, without using the assistant manager chip, attacking the double game week in somewhat of a way, getting Ndai in, and obviously already having triple Liverpool without using the assistant manager chip, it could be a strategy I go for. I think it's a safe way to play, keeping the assistant manager chip for maybe a time period where the league has started to settle down a little bit and we can really benefit on other double game weeks potentially later in the season. But in the next section of the video, I'm going to discuss how I could use the assistant manager chip for double game week 24. This is how the assistant manager chip scores points in FPL. Now, it's based on club performance. So, for example, if your assistant manager's club wins a game, they get a total of 6 points. If they draw, that's 3. And for every goal scored by that assistant manager's club, they get an extra point per goal. And for a clean sheet, that is 2 points for a clean sheet. When it gets interesting is when you take into consideration the table bonus. 10 points for a win, 5 points for a draw extra if your team is ranked 5 places below the team they're facing in that given game week ahead of the game week deadline, which could result in some serious hauls. Of course, in game week 23, when David Moyes' Everton beat Brighton away from home 1-0, that introduces the table bonus. David Moyes' Everton came away with 19 points for that game week. 6 points for a win, an extra 10 for the table bonus win, a point for the goal, and 2 points for the clean sheet. There's some serious value within this chip, and it's definitely worth to consider how you use it with your chip strategy. Now, the reason I quickly shared there how we score points with the managers is to talk about my assistant manager strategy and potentially something I deploy for game week 24. And of course, it being a double game week, there is some benefit within using it in this game week. Potentially, David Moyes could be a really great option to start with as the assistant manager. Of course, you can transfer managers in and out over that 3 game week period. So, starting off with Moyes, Liverpool at home isn't great. Maybe if they nick a goal or 2 in that fixture, you get sort of 2 bonus points with a point being awarded for every goal scored. So, yeah, maybe a decent option. If they somehow manage to draw the game, there's 5 points. So, yeah, you never know what's going to happen in that game. I don't think they're going to get a lot of points from it. And, of course, David Moyes won't get a lot of points from that fixture. But the Leicester at home fixture, on the other hand, I think is a really, really great fixture for Everton. I think that is probably why I would start with David Moyes as my assistant manager for game week 24. You could consider some other options potentially as well. But with the double game week in mind, I think it is a decent option. As I mentioned before, you can transfer in and out managers, and the small possibility that Fulham and Spurs could double in game week 25 kind of leads the strategy a little bit as well, because getting in a Fulham manager, getting in a Spurs manager, obviously the kind of team bonus can influence this a little bit as well. Obviously Fulham facing Forest at home, then Spurs at home. Of course, Spurs are lower ranked than Fulham, but Forest on the other hand, they would probably enable the team bonus at that point, and I think it's a good enough fixture for them. With Spurs, of course, Man United are quite closely ranked in terms of the Premier League with Spurs at the moment, so maybe no bonus points there in terms of team bonus, but still a great fixture. Fulham away for Spurs, a difficult fixture, but team bonus does get added at that point. Then in 26, you've got sort of Fulham with Crystal Palace at home and Spurs with Ipswich away from home. So there are some merit in just keeping those 2 managers, but you could look to maybe even go for the Brighton manager at the bottom of the screen there, bottom right, who has Southampton away from home. Of course, you've got to remember a bonus point for each goal. Could be an absolute goal fest. Who knows? But yeah, there's a lot of ways you can play this assistant managership over the next 3 weeks of FPL. I think moving in and out of managers is probably the way I would go about it, because attacking fixtures that the club has, you do that anyway in FPL, so why not do it with the manager? Of course, this is the first time it's ever been used in FPL. It's a brand new chip, so there are a lot of sort of ideas floating around, but this could genuinely be a strategy I use for game week 24. And we're going to kind of look at how my team would look potentially with being super aggressive and using the assistant manager chip. So as I mentioned just before, this would be the strategy that I use with the assistant manager chip activated. Of course, you have to keep in mind that I need a certain amount of money in the bank to kind of have the appropriate managers in at certain points. We can kind of look at each manager's price here. So, for example, Marco Silva, 1.1 million, Postecoglou, 1.1 million, and of course, David Moyes, 0.5 million. So I've got to kind of keep that in mind as I plan my team going forward. Similar strategy to how I would play without the chip, to be honest. Apart from if I'm being super aggressive, I would go Pickford. I would get rid of Wood. I would go straight away to Iliman and Die. You're really attacking the double at this point. And of course, I would leave that third Everton spot open for David Moyes. Of course, that leaves us with a lot of money in the bank. I still think I would go for Kluivert and really attack his fixtures past, obviously, this game week with Liverpool at home. Going from João Pedro into Wissa, again, makes a lot of sense to me personally. And of course, having that total in the bank there allows me to get managers in for the next few game weeks once that chip is activated. But of course, take away 0.5 from that total, as David Moyes would be my assistant manager for this strategy in particular. If it was the case that Spurs and Fulham double in this game week, you would then move to Silva or Ange Postecoglou. I think I'd slightly prefer going for the Fulham manager. So, of course, you would make that transfer using one of the remaining transfers, free transfers I would have left in my squad. Of course, again, playing, Kluivert with the Southampton home fixture, playing Robertson on the bench and potentially getting him out to go to Chalobah. Of course, it's very kind of mirrored to how I would play the non-assistant manager chip team as well. Similar transfers for game week 26, looking possibly at Ahmad for that game week. Of course, there is a lot of money in the bank to play with. It's kind of unsure on how things would look in the next few weeks anyway in terms of availability of certain players, but that's kind of an idea of how I would use the assistant manager chip and kind of how the team would also play alongside it. Of course, to outro all of my videos, I'd like to give you guys at home a massive thank you for supporting the FPL Mugs YouTube channel. Of course, if you did enjoy today's video, make sure you drop a like. And if you aren't yet subscribed to the channel, please do consider it for future FPL videos and deadline streams. But that is absolutely everything for today's video. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye for now.